one couldn't walk alone. Tongue was like a battle zone, but nowadays and so I.
And we're saying welcome back to the Now Morning Show. We are very happy to be having a conversation with Inspector Michelle Lewis of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Really looking at vigilante. Some people might say justice, some people might say injustice. We'll find out what Inspector Lewis has to say. Good morning, ma'am. How you do?
Good morning to the both of you and good morning to Trinidad and Tobago. I'm good, thank you.
Thank you very much. Vigilante, justice or injustice? Which one is it? We want a definition as well first.
Good. So it depends on how you look at it. So really, when you hear the word vigilante, it's not a good thing, generally speaking, right? But what it really means is that either a person or a group of persons investigating offenses that they think someone would have committed or about to commit. And when you hear the injustice aspect of it, it means that either their course of action was excessive or uncalled for, basically. So that the law does provide for a citizen arrest, right? And that helps the police in terms of where, you know, a group of persons or the community may have observed someone would have just committed a crime or just entered somebody's premises without the permission to commit an arrestable offense. In such circumstances, certainly the neighbors who are there will reach the person before the police can get there. So in such cases, certainly there is room in the law, in the Criminal Law Act, for a citizen arrest. But what the police is saying this morning is that when a resident or a person effects such arrest, that the use of force or the level of injury caused upon the person who is the suspect, if that is excessive, then there are some problems that can arise.
Inspector, before we get into determining what can be seen as excessive, can we go back to this concept of citizens arrest, and can you guide us as to what a citizen's arrest is and what can and can't be done?
All right, so under the law, Criminal Law Act 1004, right? It provides that, and I can read it actually.
Of course.
A person may arrest without warrant anyone who or whom he, with reasonable cause, suspects to be in the act of committing an arrestable offense. Where an arrestable offense has been committed, any person may arrest without warrant anyone who is or whom he, with reasonable cause, suspects to be guilty of the offense. So when they say arrestable, it means like any offense for which the penalty is 5 years or more, right? So burglary, housebreaking, larceny, offenses like that, and certain offenses against a person. A regular member of the community may not know what exactly is an arrestable offense, but they may see an offense being taken place in their eyesight, and they may want to arrest. What we are seeing happening in Trinidad and Tobago is that persons are using excessive force, and that is when we look at the word vigilante justice, and thinking that they are assisting the country, assisting the police by doing things like that. Now, there are neighborhood watch groups that the TTPS are actively involved in and certainly recommend for communities where residents have those eyes and ears out there, even the use of CCTV cameras to assist with persons who they know are not from their community and who may have some ill intent. And so we usually encourage neighborhood watch groups and the chats, the WhatsApp chats that goes with it, that we usually have a police officer in those chats so that it's easy to share that information with the police in quick time. So that when we look at what the law says in relation to the arresting of a person and the excessive use of force, what we want members of the public to understand is that there is a level or a degree that you must be cognizant of in effecting an arrest or arresting someone, as we would say, or preventing someone from escaping, right? Simple language. So beating a person beating up someone to a frazzle or have them, almost to the point of death, and then handing them over to the police and feeling proud of it can cause you yourself to, be a subject of a matter of investigation.
And that's one of the things I wanted to ask. Because even when you talk about arrest, and I like the fact that you break it down even further, so looking at the conversation, let me not say incapacitate, but prevent that person from moving until police can come and actually do what they do formally.
Right.
But some people might talk about, okay, well, there's levels to this. If they wasn't trying to run while we're trying to hold them for the police, okay, we wouldn't have to do this. If they didn't do this in the first place, then we wouldn't have to do this. But speak to that, and let me talk about that over-exuberance. Because yes, what might start off as a good thing in terms of helping to protect somebody, helping to defend someone, to the point of injuring someone so that you yourself can be in problems. What are some of those problems that you can find yourself in?
Well, certainly if you use more force than is necessary, that's an issue or cause of concern for the police in investigating the matter, because we do have to investigate the matter. We do have to take a statement from the suspect. And of course, whatever other type of evidence that we can derive for the investigation, which could include CCTV cameras and stuff like that, right? Which may show the level of force, right? So what we are saying this morning is that where someone, as you say, overexcited, overzealous, and want to help the police and do excessive injury to the person, break their leg, their foot, or something like that, so they can't move, that is excessive. Certainly where you have more than one person, you can restrain the person. If the person has a weapon, then that's another story, right? Because then you have to look at the use of, well, I would say from my angle, use of force policy in my police mind, but in layman terms, you have to look at the level of risk to you in trying to withhold the person, right, or to prevent the person from going. So therefore, if the level of risk to you is high, then it is best that you let that person go and let the investigation take its course through the TTPS.
Interesting. That's very interesting, I have to say. When you say that particularly, one doesn't necessarily think about that. But let's speak about, as you mentioned, those who take, as we are referencing rather, excessive force. For those who do take vigilante justice into their own hands and go beyond that reasonable force to the point where we do see some sort of actual bodily harm or grievous bodily harm happening, what are the possible penalties for those individuals?
But you actually call it, you hit the nail on the head, because you actually spoke about actual bodily harm, and grievous bodily harm, and grievous bodily harm that can be caused to the other person. So what happens when someone who is seriously injured or injured come into the hands of the police, and the suspect said, I was beaten. The police takes the person to the hospital, and we obtain a medical report on behalf of that person for more than one reason, so that it is not that the person was beaten by the police. When the person does appear before the magistrate or a judge, depending on the type of matter it is, and the police are not now held responsible for something that we did not commit. Right, so that the person is taken to seek medical attention, and based on the medical report, then we'll be able to determine the degree of any offense of injury, but also if any offense whatsoever was committed, based on the scenario, meaning if the person had any form of weapon in their hands, the level of threat that was that existed, the amount of persons that were there to arrest the person, and that kind of thing. Yeah, we know that persons have good intention in terms of ensuring that persons who commit crime are not allowed to go free, and may certainly want to assist the police, and that is good in the eyes of the law. What we are saying this morning is that we don't want it to be excessive, where you, in attempting to do something good, turns out to be bad on your end. And that is what we look at when we say vigilante justice.
And I like the fact that you speak about risk level, Inspector, and nobody necessarily trying to run out and be Punisher. But in the 2 minutes that we have, give us some tips, please, especially if there's somebody who's trying to apprehend somebody, trying to make a citizen's arrest, and then they realize, but wait, no, it's water more than flour. So this person has something on them that I may not have realized at first before I decided to be all heroic. So what are some of those things that you think that the layperson should be processing?
All right, good. So that in the first instance, you get on your phone and you call 999 and you let them know that this is the situation. If it is that it's a neighborhood watch group, you can alert other residents in your community about what is taking place. Based on your observation, you can determine if you, as 1 or 2 persons or 3 persons, as the case may be, are likely to restrain this individual. So you may have to do an assessment of the person to observe whether they have, because the person can have a weapon and you're unaware of it, right? And it's only when you brace that person or attempt to arrest the person, then the person will pull out a firearm, right? So that you have to be very cognizant of what the possibilities are. You can approach the person and ask them what they're doing there, general, regular questions to find out, if this person is really seeking to commit a criminal offense, or maybe somebody who's just in the neighborhood who's unaware, maybe lost someone who is a relative who you do not know, but who now enter this premises that you're not aware of. So it's good in the first instance to have some kind of dialogue from afar off, to inquire about, what are you doing here, and that those are safe steps to take before you actually physically start to embrace someone or effect a citizen's arrest.
And one of the reasons I ask is because, just jumping in there, because we have more individuals applying for, or we have individuals applying for firearm user license. We have conversations about stand your ground and what that entails. So, and I think this dovetails very nicely into this conversation this morning. I'm registered, I'm carrying, and I see someone who is distressing somebody else. What am I to do then?
Persons who are carriers of firearms usually have a level of training that goes with it, and usually in the sound mind. Certainly, we would like them to also assess the situation and use the level of force that is necessary in a circumstance like that. We have had instances where both officers who are off duty, which we know are trained, really, and persons who have firearms who would have assisted someone who was in distress by criminal, a perpetrator, and it was a successful arrest in that regard. So that in circumstances like that, certainly it does help, but we definitely want persons who apply, because there will be an increase in persons having private firearms, outside of law enforcement officers. There will be an increase of such persons. But also the persons who have criminal intent are also very much aware that there is expected to be a change in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of the amount of persons who now may be able to have firearms, and so they themselves will also think twice as to whether they would like to go that way, because they know now that the advantage that they had before may change.
Yeah. Well, Inspector, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been a pleasure to have you as always. I'm looking forward to having you back next week Monday.
Yes, a pleasure to be here. Thanks again, and have a good week, Trinidad and Tobago, and to you.
Trinidad and Tobago and the world, stay tuned. There's more coming up on the Now Morning Show after this break.
Hard times can't come, but just the other day, they're trying to put we down.